There was a time when I would start this talk with something that I thought was very astute. I would say, ladies and gentlemen, look to your right, look to your left. 1 in 3 women have been sexually abused. 6 in 10 men have been sexually abused. Inevitably, someone would get up and walk out. I definitely took it personally until the end, when I would go off stage and that person would be waiting for me and would say, I was that one. I decided to shift that because it wasn't my intention to call someone out. I really wanted to share that there was a way to find joy beyond trauma, and I didn't want them leaving. I just didn't understand how to communicate it yet. It took me some time. So we're going to go on a little journey. We're going to get in a time machine and go forward and back in time a bit. And I'm going to share with you what I learned, because life has a way of teaching us. And we never know when life is going to teach us something really important. That moment where I was coming off stage and that person was there and told me that they were that one person was a huge lesson for me. Now, I studied to be a therapist and spent hundreds of hours learning to be a minister and a therapist, and then tens of thousands of hours in the chair counseling. But it wasn't until later in my life when I learned something very significant, and that is how our beliefs are made. So from the age of 0 to 8, our programming, our operating system is instilled. From 0 to 8, we're essentially in hypnotizing mode. Everything that comes into a 0 to 8-year-old child is brought in without filters. They're essentially being hypnotized, all right? Their operating system is being laid down. 80% of their belief systems are in place by the age 8. From the age of 8 until 18, another 10% of your belief systems are set up and established. So that's 90% of your belief systems by the time you're 18 years old. Wow. And then another 10%, you can get some more wisdom after that. Well, I've learned, this is something that I have learned and been able to shift and really think is very important for all of us. But now let's go back and taking that data that we have from 0 to 8. When I was 4 years old was the first time I was sexually abused. From 4 until age of 12, the sexual abuse and the perpetrator was in the neighborhood. And my belief was I was alone, because I was told if I ever told anyone, I would be essentially out of the tribe from the time I was 4. So my fundamental belief was that I was alone. I had to do it on my own. I couldn't tell anyone. I was alone and I had to do it on my own. That was a fundamental belief that was an operating system that I was operating from up until, honestly, it's still there and I have to override it on a regular basis. Now, I left home at 16 because the perpetrator came back into the neighborhood. I disappeared. I went to New York City. I was going to pursue acting. Woo! I was excited because I was running as fast and as furious away from that childhood pain so that I could be somebody else. Acting was it for me. Went to New York City, performing, but hitting up against an enormous amount of, well, miasmas in the entertainment industry, let's just say. I was a model and an actor, And in modeling world, well, the sexual abuse is rampant and it's insidious. In the whole acting industry, it is insidious. I was 17 when I went back to my childhood religion to see if I could get some help. And I sat down with the chaplain, the minister, and he told me, well, what did you do? It was my fault. That's what the 17-year-old girl believed, is it was my fault. And from that moment on, I shut the door on that sexual abuse. Okay, I knew it was my fault, and I knew I was alone. Whoa. So I lived my life, buried it, put away all of those feelings and emotions, and did the best I could. I'm going to be an actor, and I'm going to do everything I can. But also, there was a piece of me that I wanted to heal. But I couldn't heal myself because I had introverted so much on the pain. I started to look at everybody else and try to fix everybody else. So I became a therapist to fix these problems, to fix everybody else. And maybe there'd be a side effect where I'd get some help. But mostly I just wanted to fix everybody else because I didn't want anybody else to have the pain that I was having. But I couldn't tell anybody. So the process would continue, and I would do my acting because that was fun and I truly wanted to have some joy in my life. And then I would do the therapy because, well, I felt called to it. I felt like this was maybe what I needed to do, but I still buried the sexual abuse and trauma until I was 35 years old when my first son was born. Now, the way a child is born and that whole process is very related to when a child is sexually abused. They're so interrelated, and I didn't understand this. So there was a significant amount of trauma around my son's birth, and that's another story. But the fact of the matter is, what it did is it triggered me to become a vigilant, well, mama tiger to my children. In every moment of their lives, I was so vigilant. And there wasn't anyone who would come around that I wouldn't make damn sure that my children were not protected. And that their belief systems were that they were loved, they were not alone, and that they could have joy, true joy. Now, to come back into where this is really my point, for me to say 1 in 3 have been sexually abused, those are statistics, 6 in 10. But those statistics are important because we are not alone. You are not alone. And the thing about trauma, it doesn't have to be sexual abuse. It's any kind of trauma. And the fact is, no one is immune to trauma. We live in a world where there is an abundance of trauma. So to know these 3 things, these were the lessons that I learned that life was teaching me. You are not alone. It is not your fault. And you can find joy beyond trauma. How you choose to find that joy is going to be unique to everyone. But that's the journey. And when you can take those first 2 steps and realize that it is about being connected, and you can open up, the experience of joy can be shared. And that when there isn't a blame, you're not blaming yourself and you're not blaming others, but there's a sense of personal responsibility, there's even more joy to be found, because that's how wisdom really comes about.